Always remember, it's never just the product, it's the brand. It doesn't matter how big or small your company is. Starting the branding process in the early stages is essential. A brand is not just a logo. Each part serves as a chapter to your story, and you want to convey that message concisely and professionally. Tune in to the Dominate Your Market podcast as Rami Guzlan shares how branding is not just about logos or colors and why businesses should prioritize branding.
I want to welcome you to the Dominate Your Market podcast, where we interview leaders, CEOs, founders, and high-impact business development professionals to get their insights on how you can grow your business efficiently, build an amazing company, and still have a life. Today's guest is Rami Guzlan. Rami is the founder and brand strategist at 10B Studios, where he helps SaaS and direct-to-consumer founders become top of mind with their target audience through people-focused brand strategy. I love that, by the way. We're going to definitely have to talk about that. Rami, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, this is awesome. I came across you on LinkedIn and thought, okay, this guy's got some stuff to talk about here. So I was super pumped to have you on and just to hear your twist on, how you think branding, how it should be, how it should look, kind of who you work with.
Right.
Because, like a lot of industries out there, there's lots of brand people and they're
Absolutely.
all very good. And I had one on yesterday that was amazing. So, it's, I love the idea of the crossover of people in similar industries, but, there's no other Rami, right? So it's like, what's your take on it? But before we get into that, give our listeners kind of a little bit of a background on you and kind of where you came from and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of where I came from, I started off doing kind of logo design and branding work, and I started doing that pretty young, honestly, like in high school times and stuff like that. So I actually met a teacher back in high school who became kind of like my mentor, and he showed me he's like, hey man, you have a talent, you can make money off of this, and he showed me what freelancing was, and that kind of skyrocketed everything for me. So from there, it was like I made $15 on a logo when I was like 16, 15. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I got hooked. I was really hooked. And so I kept going, and I was on Fiverr for a minute, but then I moved to Upwork. And this whole transition of doing things led me to bigger and bigger companies. And it I started naturally moving into the SaaS and D2C space, and D2C is like direct to consumer brands. So essentially moving through that whole thing, I met a few people who were brand strategists at the time, and they kind of essentially took me under their wing. I got a little lucky with that. And they showed me the ropes, really showed me what it means to build a brand, and especially in the D2C space originally. And then I personally moved a little bit into SaaS as well. But yeah, so I mean, that's where it started. And then about 2 years ago, I started a small company called 10B Studios, and it's only about 4 of us. But what we do is we help SaaS and D2C companies become top of mind. And the way we do that is through communicating your value. And I'll get more into what that means. But yeah, it's been really great. The whole process of growing this up to the point it's at, and it's only up from here. So,
well, that's an awesome story. And it blows me away. And I talked about that with the gentleman yesterday. Is that when you think of brand, which is all about your messaging and differentiating and standing out from everybody else, so many people don't. So many companies and CEOs and business owners, that's like an afterthought.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why do you think that is? If we want to get in their head a little bit. And it might be difficult for you, but maybe you've had some conversations where you can answer that. But why do you think it's sort of like an afterthought branding where it's like so critical?
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest objections I've seen, especially when I was first starting and doing just emerging SaaS and D2C. So like you just started or something like that. The biggest objection was, okay, let us get some leads. We're working with this lead, company. They're going to go do all this cold outreach for us. Let's get some leads first, and then we'll come back to you and worry about branding. And I sit there and, I shake my head, because it's like, well, you're getting cold leads. Those leads aren't qualified. They're not able to qualify themselves. You're going to get in a million sales calls and book nothing. And that's what's ended up happening. I mean, there was a company literally a few months back who did this exact thing with me. And I messaged him a few weeks ago and I said, hey man, how's everything going with that lead company? They said, man, I've been booked solid with the calls. We haven't had a single user, not one person signed up. And so now we're in talks doing a whole strategy thing. But going with the brand first mentality allows you to, first of all, attract your target customers, but also make it very clear as to who you are as a brand. Because we're not in, it's not the dot-com boom anymore. You know what I mean? Everybody's doing everything. So the only way you're going to differentiate yourself is by being yourself and being different and truly developing a human persona around your brand rather than doing all this cold outreach, because there's a million other companies out there who do exactly what you do.
Human persona, that's a big phrase right there, human persona, because I think, what would you say so a lot of my clients, CEOs, they're kind of behind the scenes. Some of them aren't even on their own websites, and that's a whole nother discussion. We won't talk about that. But what would you say to them? What would that look like to them? Let's say you're pitching somebody, and it's a CEO, and they've got 100 employees, and maybe it's a blue collar company, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, what? People don't need to know me. I don't need to be, and maybe he's not very social. A lot of my clients are men, so sorry for the reference to he, but a lot of my clients are men. But what would you say to if you were on a call like that? Yep. Right. And I would love to hear it. I'd love to be what do you want to call that? On a fly on the wall.
Right. Yeah.
To see, what will you say to that, to like a blue collar, let's say this guy's 50 years old. He's had the company for 15 years. He's not even on his website. Right. But when you go to the website and you have done a little bit of your research, which I'm sure you do on everybody for a call, you go, yeah, I don't know what these guys are about. I have no clue. What would you say to a CEO like that? Because that would be a lot of our listeners, right? What would you say to them?
And so they're looking to, what you're trying to say is that they need to make themselves a part of this brand as well, is what you're trying to say.
Well, I'm asking you, should they, number one?
Should they? Okay, yeah. I was just trying to clarify, yeah.
Yeah, should they be, and what should be, obviously we know as a company, if you don't have a clear message, then forget it. But what would you say to that individual? Because a lot of them, you're probably not going to get a 50-some-year-old man to say, yeah, I'm going to shoot video and I'm going to step out front. Yeah, I'll do it. You're probably not going to get it.
Right.
So how would you work with somebody like that?
Great question. That's a great question. So when I'm talking to just founders specifically, especially with these kind of so let's say, for example, I run these workshops, which I can talk about later, but it's usually a stakeholder team. And so when I'm just talking to the founder of the company, I usually reference people who have very strong personal brands and then bring that back to D2C. So for example, a lot of the people I talk to are on LinkedIn very often. So I ask them, hey, do you know Justin Welsh? And they say, yeah, I do. And I said, okay, how do you know Justin Welsh? What's the main way you know him? And they said, oh, well, I actually listened to his podcast the other day. And obviously I see his posts all the time. And then I read his newsletter the other day about da-da-da. And it's like, okay, so do you know? And then I bring up, somebody in my network that I know who's I personally think is underrated, for example, that matches them. And I say, do you know this person? And they say, no, who's that? And I say, exactly, this is the point. So when it comes to, D2C or even personal branding, but it does apply to D2C especially, is you should be part of your brand. You should be in all these different touch points. And as a founder now, I mean, like we were just saying, you want to humanize your brand. And the best way to do that is to put a face in front of it. And it should be your face. You know your brand inside and out. You know your company inside and out. You need to be able to share your story in a way that brings people to you and attracts that target audience to you. People who have the same mindset as you, because we buy based off of emotion, and then we justify with logic, right? So it's like you want to really get in front of your target audience, and you want to share your story in a way that appeals to them. And the only way to do that is if you are genuinely part of your brand.
You know what's interesting when you say that is and I think of a lot of my clients that are literally hiding behind their companies. Right. I've got a team that builds websites, right? And that's different from my consulting with clients. But and the second most visited page on a business website is the about page.
Right.
Statistically proven. And when you tell an owner that, they're like, "Wow, what?" And then when you pull up their about page, and
it's like nothing.
It's horrible. Right. It's horrible, right? Like some 20-year-old picture, if they even have a picture, and it's all about, credentials and all that stuff. Right. And so right away I say, okay, well, listen, if you don't want to embrace this branding stuff, how can we get you to shoot a video? Like a 30-second video. Tell your story, but make the story to the benefit of your ideal prospect. Don't just be me.
Right.
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 So
exactly.
That's, and I want to hear your take on that, because a lot of them might not embrace a full-blown branding package, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if you could even get a first step of like, okay, John, right? Our fictitious guy here, John, how about this? Can we get you I'll even do a Zoom call with you, and we'll record the dang thing when I'll get you just talking, and then all of a sudden we'll clip it out, and then you'll have a founder story. And people, when they go to the about page, or you can put that on your LinkedIn page or whatever,
Right.
now they know the person behind the company, man or woman, by the way,
Absolutely.
and they know the reason why you even have the company.
And yeah, and getting people on board to do that, I think starts with, talking about the result of it, right? So I think it goes to talking about first, why did that first person buy from you? So let's say you're an emerging company. Let's say you're just starting out, maybe you just got funding and now you're looking to scale. So how did you get that first user base? How did you get the first 5? What made them pull out their wallet? And go talk to them, physically go and interview these people and figure out what is it that attracted them to you? Because we already know there's 1,000 other people, 1,000 other views out there. So what attracted them to you? And then it's about really replicating that. So like you're saying, I mean, through that founder story, for example, through that about page, when you're talking, you want to be talking about these different points that people brought up. So for example, if let's say it's your actual personality, let's say you talk to somebody and you got a big, account on your SaaS startup or whatever. If it's your personality, then lean into your personality during your story. I mean, don't just put that off to the side. And this is something I even struggled with, which is funny because it was an ironic twist. It was like, I'm helping all these people, telling them what to do this, strategy. And then I'm coming to my LinkedIn and ignoring all the pieces that differentiate.
Everybody does it. We all
right?
do it.
So it's like, and once I started to put more emphasis on these pieces, then the growth started happening, traction started building, inbound leads started coming in. So really talk to your customers and bring in their point of view into your story. And that's, you'll start to really replicate your most high profit clients.
Now, I know a lot of the work you do is D2C, direct to consumer. A lot of my clients are B2B.
Yep.
So even though that might not be kind of your sector, you're still a professional at branding. So what would you say on a B2B standpoint? Now it's business to business. It's not, it's still humanistic. And we can talk about this too, by the way, because when one person's talking to another, you've got the buyer, you've got the seller. It's two human beings right there.
Absolutely.
So in B2B, what would you say to that? And what would you say, again, let's go back to you're having a conversation with the founder, the CEO, the business owner. And he's like, yeah, I don't get why I need to be even involved. We're B2B, I've got my sales people, we're doing our thing. What would you say to that?
So if somebody thinks that brand does not matter and they can just essentially focus on their, cold outreach, their sales team and things like that, I would essentially ask them what their quality of work is right now, or their quality of customers are right now. Are they happy with the quality? And if they are happy with the quality, then honestly, I would step back and say, you know what, maybe we're not a good fit, and that's okay. But if they're not happy with the quality and they feel like, okay, there are these, a few accounts, or if you're B2B, there are a few clients that are really just draining us. They're taking all of our time. And it's just like, we're getting underpaid and overworked. And we're seeing this over and over, and we're saying yes to everything just because we need the income. And this is our main source of income. So I would look at that and I would say, okay, well, who are your highest, performing clients? And we would look at those clients and essentially like, okay, how can we replicate those people? And, we talked about, the interviewing piece, but now it's about the whole strategy piece. As a B2B brand, I mean, we're in this new age of branding now, right? So,
for sure.
So the definition hasn't necessarily changed, but now it's more focused on building genuine and more personal relationships with your audience. So, rather than this whole cold outreach and, hey, look at me, it's more about, I see you from, in terms of us to our customers. And so how do we do that? And I think the main pieces are getting your employees online. So if you're B2B, you're a small business, that's a big thing is, getting people representing your brand. Show that your employees actually enjoy working with you. Show that people like your company culture and know what you do. And that gives you other touch points. It gives you more, areas to build trust, because like we were saying before, you don't want to be behind the wall of your logo, essentially online, especially now. And one of the best ways to do that is to get, you into the customer story, but also get the other people working with you to advocate for you and to talk about you. Another thing is start active listening. I mean, when you're online, when you're scrolling, start really reading into what people are saying, get into what people's opinions are. Ask questions, go into comments, go DM people. Another piece is that when you're building out your messaging and then, your brand touch points, which are, the different areas that the different mediums that you present yourself online, take your customer's POV into account. Don't do anything that's, not moving the needle for you. Make sure you're on all the platforms that actually make sense and are actually going to move the needle for your business. And then just honestly, overall, just be transparent. Make it feel like there's a real person behind this team. Make it feel like the team is really working together and together on a common mission. And that's a really great way to scale your B2B highest performing customers rather than what people are currently doing now.
I think what you said is critical, and it's a whole chapter in my book, by the way. It's a whole chapter. My book, Dominate Your Market, the one back there. But the book talks about having your team become evangelists for your company.
Right.
So I use the word evangelist.
That's a great word. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So because really, and again, that goes into company culture, which I've got people on the podcast that talk all about culture, which is critical, by the way. But if you can get your team on board with the brand message, and if they're out and about and they can spew it out, like, what do you guys do and what do you you've turned, let's say you got a company of 100. You just turned 100 people into your best salespeople.
Absolutely. And that compounds, and it's exponential growth too, because especially once you have people like that, you have a whole team of advocates. And that's another piece of this new age thing, right? So we're looking to build more than a customer base. We're looking to build a fan base. And the way you do that is through this whole advocation piece. Get your customers online, or get your employees online. It's very important.
Yeah. When you said that, and I thought, I wrote a chapter on that in my book. There you go. So, because it is critical, right? Because I think if you can get your team, however big your company is, 10 people, 100 people, whatever, if you can get even a percentage of them that really enjoy their job and want to talk about it out in public in social environments, wow, like it is massive, right? Because when people hear an employee happily talk about their job and the company, talk about brand message, there it is.
Exactly. And another piece is, let's say you're smaller. Let's say you have 3-4 people and nobody wants to go online. Then now it's your job to go online. So now it's your job as the founder to start building out your personal brand and to show the passion that you have behind what you're building. Because that's what people rally behind. I mean, they rally behind your passion. People like other passionate people. So if you can show that what you're doing means something and it's valuable to you, and you can do that while growing a community at the same time, then you can make up for, maybe the employees that don't want to be online. For example, it's really powerful.
Well, what's interesting too is that, especially for me in the B2B sector, there's really only one platform, and we know the platform. It's exactly. LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I think even for the older, and I'm 59, by the way. So I think even for the 50-year-old CEO or founder, to tell them, listen, really, we got one platform. Just get on LinkedIn, wake up in the morning, 7 o'clock. If you get in the office at 8, 7 o'clock, 7:30, just log into your LinkedIn. Take a look around,
just leave some comments.
Leave some comments, do a post, and nobody is too big in my opinion. And boy, I talk about this a lot in my book too, where I've had clients of mine that, worth $60 million, $80 million personally worth that. Wow. I don't care. I don't care. Exactly. I don't care. You are a human being. Do you like your company? Are you proud of your company?
That's how I see it too.
Then get out there.
Exactly.
Right. So there's really no excuse for anybody to say, "Oh no, I've got 100 employees. I don't need to." No, I mean it's almost as if they're saying it's below them.
Exactly. Which,
and they're like, post on LinkedIn. Why would I do that?
Exactly. And that's the thing, especially B2B. I mean, your thing is person-to-person business. So it's like you should show your personality. You should be online in a sense where people feel like they know you without actually ever talking to you. I mean, think about people on YouTube or the videos you see on LinkedIn. You feel like you know these people. You feel like they're creators that are part of your life, ingrained in your day-to-day. When you hop on a call with your favorite creator, you're not uncomfortable. You don't feel like I have to get to know this person.
You know them.
Yeah, you feel like you know them. You trust them already. And that's the whole power of building out your personal brand, especially B2B, even D2C space.
For sure.
It's
interesting if you think about this, even from like a return on investment, let's get into like the money part of branding, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, what's an ROI for branding? I mean, you can't even define it, whatever, right? Here's what I say to that. So what if you shot, let's say you're in B2B, and I've got lots of clients in this sector that a transaction's worth 6 and 7 figures. One transaction, right? Because it's B2B.
Right.
It's big.
Yeah, exactly.
So I tell every CEO client of mine, so if we shot a strategic 30-second video and you put that on the website, on the about page, maybe even on the homepage, and we put that on like your LinkedIn and we pin it and it's at the top.
Right.
Do you think, sir, or ma'am, do you think that if somebody watched that video and they were in your market, that in months to come, you might not get a client from that 30-second video? And they go quiet on me, right? And I go, are you there? Hello? Are you there? Right? And they're like, probably. And I said, okay, so 30-second investment of your time to make millions.
Yep. It
Wow.
is an investment too. That's the thing. So that's the piece that is maybe the biggest hurdle to get over when thinking about investing in something like this, is that it is an investment. So the costs are incurred now and you get the benefits later. But those benefits are compounding. So something I like to say is the difference between marketing and branding is that marketing tells you who you are and branding makes people fall in love with you. So the entire idea is that when you're building out your brand, what you want to do is you want to position yourself in a way where people are falling in love with you. And the only way people do that is over time. That doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
So in terms of investing in branding and things like that, you want to be able to have a future-oriented mindset, be able to look a few years in the future and realize, for example, that video clip example you're talking about, realize that within a year, you're going to have a full sales funnel just from that video that's essentially working for itself and working like an automated machine
100%.
rather than you having to put any team into that. Just because you put in the upfront work and made that investment to create a video and a branding element that really appealed to your customers. So it's longer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Another thing you mentioned is new age branding, new age of branding.
Right.
What do you mean? I can make guesstimations on what you mean, but tell our listeners what that is.
Sure. Yeah. So essentially this isn't changing the definition of branding that I was talking about earlier, which was, your market, your perception of the market, what people think of you. But what it is changing is the tactics that we use to shape those perceptions. So rather than, like I was saying earlier, I think I touched on it. It was essentially just, rather than the entire cold outreach and the whole marketing focused thing, it's more focused on building those genuine and personal relationships with people, and then scaling those relationships up. So this new age is very focused on you and the customer pretty equally, 50-50. And what I mean by that is you spend time defining who you are without thinking about your customer in any way, shape, or form. Define what your mission is. What are you here to do? What are your driving values as a company? And how are you going to hold yourself in the market? What's your personality look like? Things like that. So figure out what your core brand first, and then make assumptions about your customers. And what I mean by that is think about, well, okay, what do I think made them pull out their wallet and buy from me? What do I think their day-to-day looks like? What do I think motivates them? From there, it's about validating those assumptions through things like interviews and customer research, focus groups, and then applying that to essentially create a brand that communicates the value that you bring from your point of view in a way that by speaking your customer's language, if that makes sense. And so it's that 50-50 split that's more focused on building up a community and building up people that are like-minded rather than, we fix your solution type of, or we fix your problem type of thing. And it's more of, we think the same. We're very like-minded people. We should work together. We should be in the same community. And from there, it builds trust over time and compounds. And that's kind of the new age piece philosophy.
That's a great definition. That's awesome. It's interesting because it really does surprise me that probably I'm going to say this, and you probably could attest to it better than me because this is your profession. But I'm going to guess that the majority of companies, and that's over 50% is a majority.
Yep.
I'd like to say almost 80 or 90%, but the majority of companies have no brand.
Absolutely.
It's a confusing brand if they have one.
Yep.
It makes no sense to what they offer and what the benefit is to the end. So when you see that, what goes through your mind? Because this is what you do for a living, right? So
right.
I know for me, I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh my, yeah, literally, that's my first thought. I shake my head and it's like, okay, because at first glance, when something's not clear, it's way too complex, and it's way harder to be simple than it is to be complex. It takes a lot more work to cut out things that might mean a lot to you personally, or things that you feel like are working but aren't. So when I see something like that, my first thought is cut everything. Go down to the core of what you are. What do you do? What's your offer? What's your message? Once you're there, then go from each piece. What's the biggest priority to you? For example, let's say you see a company, you go on their website, and it's talking about, like it's something completely different from the post you just came from, right? Let's say you saw a LinkedIn post, you get on the website and it's like, what is this? This doesn't feel like the same thing at all. So it really comes down to, okay, you see that, you need to fix it. How do you fix it? So step one is, go down to the core. What do I offer? And what's the core message? And who am I serving? Those three pieces. Once you have that laid out, which are just three simple questions, really, lay out the answers to those, and then figure out, okay, where's my best platform to be? What's my best thing to do? And just do that one thing. See how it works. Then iterate and improve, iterate and improve. Don't throw everything at a wall and see what sticks. Throw things lightly at the wall and see what sticks, because when you throw everything, it confuses people and it deters people, and then it's hard to get their attention back. So you don't really want to mess up by, trying everything and being overly complex.
How do you feel about, like, 'cause I'm big on, and I talk about this in my book as well, but the word pain is a big motivator, right?
Yeah,
pain is probably the biggest motivator, right? When somebody's in enough pain, they'll finally make a decision. And at the end of my book, I've got a really cool story, very, very just human story that just like caps off the book. It's like, oh my God.
Awesome. Yeah, I have to read it.
Yeah. I think you'd enjoy it. It's a pretty aggressive book, but it's a great book. But anyways, but pain. So what about this too? So if they only did this in their brand, if they said, okay, what's the biggest pain point of our customers? The biggest one, the one that keeps that customer up at night.
Yep.
Get your messaging around that. Would you agree that even like if they just did that, that would be massive?
That's huge. Yeah, absolutely. And then also make sure that when you're doing that, communicate it in an effective way. So for example, let's say I'll go back to the personal branding example. Let's say you're on LinkedIn doing a personal brand and you want to communicate this pain point. Communicate it in a digestible way that really hammers home the pain point and really like turns the key for people. You know what I mean? So when you write out a hook, for example, make sure that it's showing that you're in their shoes, and then really turn that pain as you continue reading. It shouldn't also feel like a ginormous wall of text, because someone's going to scroll right by, and then you won't, show that you value them or show that you know their point of view. So communicate it effectively, but you're 100% right. As long as you just stick with the pain point piece as the basis of everything, that's more than good enough.
You will dominate your market.
Absolutely.
You'll dominate your market just from doing that alone, because most people don't do it. Most of the companies don't do that.
Exactly.
Address the pain, because that's human psychology says if you offer a product or a service, well, you're offering it for a reason. Somebody has a problem you're solving.
Right.
Well, that's the elephant in the room right there. Like
address the problem, right?
Address that problem right there. So that's awesome. So now another thing you talk about, so people-focused brand strategy.
Right.
So, because I love that phrase, by the way. I mean, that's like almost like, I don't know if you got that on your LinkedIn, but I like that. That's really good.
Thank you.
So explain that a little bit. People-focused brand strategy. What is that?
Yeah. So that's kind of going a little bit more into that process I was talking about earlier, where it's about making assumptions and then validating those assumptions. And the entire idea of people-focused strategy is it's focused on qualitative data over quantitative. So I've especially seen other branding agencies, and I actually was going to partner with one a while ago until I really didn't like the way they were doing things. I didn't really enjoy the entire, let's make a survey, let's send out a survey to our entire email list, and let's get all these insights and see, okay, how we can adjust our messaging, which is great. Those are definitely insights, but they're not actually useful to develop your brand in the beginning. What is useful is figuring out your customer story, figuring out genuinely where they started, where they are now, and where they want to go. For example, you can do this in really interesting ways. Something that I did a few months ago, 6 months ago, is I wrote something called Founders Articles. The series was called Self-Starters Series. And I went and interviewed SaaS and D2C founders and learned about their story. I literally learned about their childhood from, what motivated them as kids to, what were your aspirations? How did you end up where you are? What's your vision for the future? I didn't sell anything to them. I didn't do anything. I sat and I listened to their story, and then I wrote it. You can actually check it out on my LinkedIn.
I will check it out for sure.
But there's a bunch of them there. And the entire idea behind that was I want to genuinely learn what makes these people tick, what makes them actually get up in the morning, and what are those deep rooted, motivators? What are those things that are going to get them to take action? And the best way for me to do that wasn't through surveys. It was through genuine interviews and genuinely sitting and actively listening to these people. And so, yeah, you can do something similar where, maybe podcasts or articles. But yeah, learn about who they are as a person and then actually apply those insights in terms of your branding. So when you're thinking about visuals and touch points and your message, refer back to those stories that you wrote or those, interviews that you had, and make sure they align. Make sure everything you're doing aligns. And then also you can use, if you're doing a few interviews, like what we do at Tembi, we like to set up a focus group. So as we're continuing and as we're iterating, we have this group of people that we can go back to and say, hey, what do you think? Like, what do you think of this? What would you do differently? What are you, things like that, which allows you to iterate using actual qualitative data. And that's the whole people focus piece. But then something else we do is that we scale those insights. So we do still use surveys, but it's based off of those interviews. So after those interviews, we essentially put together a 3-question survey that only has sliders. So to see how much people agree with the insights that we gained. And then we send that out to the email list. Very simple. It's just to validate whether or not the insights we gained are actual insights or not. Then we go from there and develop, your messaging and everything like that based off of the customer stories.
That is awesome. It's interesting when you talk about like the different strategies you can use to get that information. Right. We've got a client right now that we're going to have them do a customer spotlight interview type of thing.
That's cool. Yeah.
There's your data right there. There it is. And so number one, you can repurpose that in so many different ways, right? You can repurpose that for them. They can use it, look like the hero to their customer database. Yep. You can gather data. You can use that on your, you know what I mean? So that's a strategy and we've got that. We're going to be doing that in the next month or so with one of my clients. And we just created this idea of customer spotlight, and we interview them, and then boom, we repurpose it, and we get data. We get great information. So yeah, take some notes on that one because you might.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I like that.
But it's interesting. So I think it's cool what you do. I was so happy to come across you. You're the younger generation, and I'm all about that, right? I'm not the guy that's even though I am 59, I'm not the guy that.
Don't look at all.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, I'm not the guy that wants to be this old dude. Yeah. My kids are 27. I got a 27-year-old son, and I think he's pretty damn comfortable hanging around with me. You know what I mean? Right. So we can grab a beer, and so I want to be that way. And so when I came across your profile, I thought, I got to get this guy on my podcast because your content was great. So for people who want to find out about you and your company, give us websites, give us anything you can, and then that'll be on the show notes of my webpage as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So in terms of finding out a little bit more about Tembi Studios, you can go to tembistudios.co. So it's .co. We couldn't find the .com, so here we are. But so we help SaaS and D2C brands become top of mind. And essentially how it's through a 3-step framework, which is start off with brand strategy workshops, very interactive, then go into interviews and research, and then from there go into designing your visuals and messaging. And what you end up with is a full brand strategy presentation with an implementation plan that shows you how you can gain traction and become top of mind in your market. So yeah, you can learn more from our website. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, just Rami Guzlan. I post, Monday through Friday, all about becoming top of mind. And and that's pretty much it. Okay, so the website, I want to spell it out. So it's www.tnby.com. Sorry, I should have spelled it out. TENBY studios. So TENBY studios.co. Okay, and that'll be all in the show notes as well. But I want them, because when you said it, I could probably, some people might be like, what did he say again? Yeah, sorry about that. So do it one more time. Spell it out one more time. No worries. Yeah, so the website is tembistudios.co, which is TENBY studios.co. Perfect. Awesome. There you go. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, though. I really appreciate the opportunity. Well, Rami, this was awesome, and it's great to talk to a young, hungry guy like you. I love it. I love it. I just love the grind, and so I feed off that stuff. So same here, man. That's awesome. Yeah. So thank you for being on, and have a great day. You too, man. Thank you. You've just listened to the Dominate Your Market podcast with CEO, business consultant, and author Michael Peterson.
Growth-minded CEOs hire Michael to explode their revenues, build an amazing company, and create a transformational mindset that encapsulates growth, success, and ultimately, happiness. His book, Dominate Your Market, is creating quite a stir in the marketplace. Go to dominateyourmarketbook.com and get your first chapter free.